Luxury vans are all the rage today, and if you're a smart installer or wrap shop, you will focus on not only wrapping the outside of those vans, but also the insides. Really good money, especially the interior pieces, because those are really high quality installs. You can charge a lot if you have the right install skills to get perfect finishing. So in this video, you're going to see GMS Brazil wrap these storage units in this van, and you can see they're plain, boring white, really not great to look at. And so with the Crocodile, they're going to be absolutely amazing. But they have their definitely challenges in terms of install. And we're going to focus on the main covers of relaxing the film, especially around those body lines and sides, to get a perfect finish. And the material being used is a Crocodile interior film. In this case, it comes from Crocodile, which is cool. So oftentimes you're going to be installing these on location. So right now GMS has a work table, rolls the material out, and notice he has a little bit of fabric on the table so it doesn't get scratched during this process. He gets his measurement and is using the grid on the back of the liner right now as a guide to give a rough cut. This doesn't have to be perfectly straight, but it should be symmetrical enough just to make it kind of easier during the install. Obviously he's going to be cutting a lot of these so he can use that as a template for the others. Now, with the material prepped and ready for install, he's going to degrease the main area. Oftentimes with these luxury vans, especially if you get them brand new, don't have to degrease too much, but they do sometimes come with a little coating from the factory. So very important to use the degreaser. Always spray directly on the microfiber towel and not onto the main surface. You always want to avoid moisture building up on the object that you're wrapping. That can be common with interior film because the surface can be a little bit porous. Now, once everything's been cleaned and greased, very important to put an adhesive promoter on the edge. Make sure you use the right one. Some are solvent, some are water-based. This one's a solvent because this is a closed surface. And notice that GMS is being super precise in putting on all the edges. Very, very, very important to get this on 100% of all the edges. So definitely do a 360 at the Wrap Institute. We're very much into 360s, starting at one point and doing a loop. And if you do that and you're super precise, the chance of missing an edge is 0. But if you have a random approach to this, the chance of missing a section is very high, and that can lead to a very costly redo. So now it's time for install with the prep done. So notice GMS gives himself space to breathe, opens one side, keeps the other side closed because it's much easier to get the main piece on. Double checks that it fits left to right, top to bottom. Notice he doesn't have too much material left to right, top to bottom. Just needs enough to wrap around. That's a really good tip for interior film. If you have a lot of excess film, and because the adhesive is really aggressive with interior film, it can really stick on outside areas of what you're wrapping and really make it a challenge. So just make sure that this piece is just big enough and then you're good to go. Notice that he's being very patient with in terms of how he's squeezing. He's not going full cowboy, taking off the entire liner, just working in baby increments. And that is again because the adhesive is aggressive, and it needs to be aggressive because what you're wrapping oftentimes is a low surface energy. And keep in mind that, even though he's working in baby increments right now, air can, really kind of build up quickly just as soon as that adhesive touches the surface. And if there's any air behind the squeegee, boom, you got a bubble. But this particular film has an air egress feature, so immediately press it to make sure that air comes out and then continue on. Don't leave that bubble till the end because you want to avoid having to pick up a giant area of the film. Just if you have to pick up an area for a bubble, it should be immediately. Now we're getting ready to transition towards the sides, but before we can get to the sides, we have to deal with this little latch right here. So GMS gives it a kiss of heat, uses the hard side of a squeegee to tuck it in nice and deep, and now it's going to cut it just on the inside portion right now. And this feathers off towards the sides, left and right. So he's focused on the flat section that's in the body of this piece right now, gives it a relief cut right in the middle at that 50-50 point, tucks it in again just so it fits nice and tight, and then transitions. It's slightly rounded on this side. So notice that he's taken the time to do a little baby cut so that it can round and he can tuck it right to the base. Very important to kind of keep that transition nice and clean because what he's wrapping is white. If he makes one bad cut, especially on something really tight like this, the chance of seeing white is extremely high. So being super patient right here is critical. So once that upper section is done, now it's time to focus on the bottom area here. So he's really double and triple checking this corner right now. And then once he makes his decision, in this case, he's going to cut to the left away. And then he's going to come back in and cut the main front part right here. So this front part goes into the main area of the van right now. So this is basically like a flush cut. You can see this is going to clip onto something. So it doesn't need to fully wrap around. It just needs to wrap around just a little bit so that it looks good once the piece is reinstalled in the van. So he basically makes the cut at the bottom, essentially like a solid cut, folds it to the empty side, and good to go. And now we get to the corners. These corners are very tricky because they're slightly inverted past 90. So that puts a lot of stress on the material to hold for the long term. Even if this was a thin cast film, it would be quite stressful. This particular film is 10 mil, it's textured, so there are a lot of different tension points. So very important to get this right. So he makes a tiny little relief cut at the bottom, and now it's all about heat and just being super smart about the cuts. So tiny little relief cut at the bottom, adds heat here, and notice that the material is really shrinking to this corner, and it basically just sits down nice, clean, and straightforward. So he sees a little bubble that came up there, so he immediately takes care of it, and notice, boom, it hits it with heat, and the material really shrinks. That's zero stretch right now, because he didn't stretch the film at all, but there's inherently stretch in the film due to the manufacturing process. So GMS uses that to wrap the outside, super smart. Now he opens this top section, and once he opens it, he really wants to make sure he seals the deal at that top area. So very important to kind of double, triple check it. Hit it with heat right now so the material can really just suck right onto the surface. Try to avoid picking up right there on the edge, because definitely you put adhesive promoter there, so you don't want to pick the material up and down a lot. Just make sure you kind of get it into place. Lots of tension on the corner, as I said earlier. You can see that giant wrinkle, so watch what GMS does. Here is all about relief cuts and being super smart about visual. So here he cuts away, and he cuts away at a 45-degree angle, so we can fold it in right now. A little bit of excess film that's touching the adhesive on the main part, so he immediately cuts it away so it doesn't sit too long. Makes a nice good little cut, about 1/8 of an inch wraparound. So that's one relief cut, but there's still quite a bit of tension there. So what GMS is going to do is he's going to do another relief cut, as reading the wrinkles, and he cuts right where the wrinkle was, angriest. So once he makes that cut, he folds this over now, trims off the excess by about 1/8 of an inch, and he's not done with relief cuts here. So that 90-degree kind of overlap at the top looks really good and professional, and then he makes another relief cut on another body line so that it can fold over. A little bit of tension there, so he adds heat, and always thinking about the overlaps and where they are visual, he lays the flat part down here, then that flap at the top, that flat at the top is going over that 90-degree overlap, that transition, and also that main piece, which is awesome. With that top section done, GMS adds heat to really relax the film, especially on that inside section. Runs his finger up to check for tension. Very important to kind of finish strong right now. So bottom corner's done, top corner's done, and now it's time about just finishing. Double checking that edge is really good to set up for cutting, and then the free hand pulls away to create nice even tension. And this is actually a fairly tricky cut because of these texture of the crocodile. So once he makes that cut nice and straight, comes back and shaves anything that's just kind of barely hanging off the side. Once this is cleaned up, then it's time to transition to the other side, which is exactly the same. There's no need to change the techniques at all. Make sure that tension's relieved at the corner. Make sure you got that 90-degree overlap at the top with that main piece going on. So there's basically a triple overlap on that upper corner. Looks nice and clean. Removes the excess film, pulling away, creates that nice even tension. Once everything's done, coming back in and shaving. So once this side is done, now it's time to move to post-install and finishing right now. Didn't take anything past 10% because of those relief cuts, but very important to close it and then just go over everything with a heat gun to make sure all those edges are sealed. And for post-install, that's pretty much it, which is very easy and straightforward. So you can see with the right prep and solid install techniques, you can get a perfect transformation from a white cabinet to one that has a crocodile finish. And because he has this good system and setup, now he can kind of rock and roll on the others, and he's good to go. So I hope you picked up some great tips and tricks on how to wrap interior pieces in luxury vans. Thanks for watching. I'm Justin Pate.